Hey everybody, welcome to What Culture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Hello. Now, there's been a full-on interview over on Eurogamer by an ex-Visceral employee called Ben Wannett, who just pretty much broke down every single thing in regards to how Dead Space 4 was going to go. One of the most heart-wrenching, heartfelt, missed opportunities in gaming, considering that Visceral are now shuttered, gone out of business, and moved on to other projects.
Don't remind me.
So the Dead Space franchise, as a lot of people already remember over the years, kind of had a bit of an iffy third installment, but it seems like pretty much the way that they were going into Dead Space 4 was answering a lot of the qualms from that. Now, I didn't play all the way through Dead Space 3.
It was all right, you know. It was pretty good. I thought it didn't deserve all the criticism that it got.
Maybe not, but one of the things in there that they said they would take major influence from was the flotilla section, which seems like a more open-ended part of the game, which is something that I guess you had more opportunities to go in a bunch of different directions. They basically would have built Dead Space 4 around that idea. So it's set after the end of, obviously it's set after the end of 3, and the humanity's been wiped out, it's the apocalypse and all that kind of thing. And you would basically be given this whole open-ended space where you're in a ship and you're basically trying to find a bunch of survivors, crafting components, you're going into the crafting weapons, and you're basically going place to place to place, trying to find, they're called shock points, I think, a shock point travel. And you're trying to find a shock unit or whatever to go from place to place, leveling up your character or finding equipment along the way. What do you think of that? Because that seems like a different pace.
Well, you know what? It sounds really good. I love the idea of sort of going from one spaceship to like the other, sort of like getting parts. That survival element is something, you know, like the original Dead Space did really well. And 3 admittedly did touch upon that, like the sort of like the more free-form, open-ended like ways of it, like you said, the flotilla section. That was really great. If they could have sustained that for a whole game, lush. You mentioned something before we started filming that sort of blew my mind. That sort of focus on crafting opened it up again for sort of like microtransactions and stuff.
That's my thing.
The Dead Space 3 I enjoyed more than other people do. But the original vision, original vision for Dead Space was even better than the finished game. But EA obviously they didn't let the devs do what they wanted to do when it came to like the psychosis stuff and the way it played around with like narratives. And I'm like, this sounds like a great vision. If they got to like sort of deliver on this, that's an entirely different thing.
In regards to obviously the EA monopoly on their own devs, Ben Wannett talks about that. The idea that if they were going to do Dead Space 4, they would have to reapproach the way that the budgets were handled. Because he thinks that Dead Space makes more sense with a lower budget. It means that he's talking about how they can move away from doing the big action set piece stuff and focus more on the horror side of things. Which, like, for me, I mean, I think Dead Space is gaming's Alien or something. It's like it's just space horror perfected. I've not come across another game that nailed the atmosphere and the tone as well as that. And it seems like they knew that as well. So yeah, if they had crafting components, it would depend. I guess it would depend entirely on the budget. A lot of the reason that they get put into games is to recoup stratospheric budgets. But it seems like his head's in the right place, and it seems like if they had full creative control, they would reduce the budget. That is so that they don't have to fall back.
That's a really interesting thing. Because you never hear sort of people on about like, oh, we'll do this low budget. That just in like movies, obviously you take a cut of the budget. Like you cut that down if something's like R-rated or something. You know, like the upcoming Joker movie is going to be made for like $55 million compared to like the big budget of Justice League, which was like $300 million. But you don't get that in gaming. It's either all or nothing.
Seems to be.
So I really think there is a market for like that those smaller scale, not even experiences, those smaller scale budgets to still make those story-driven games. Because like you said, the reality is they cost a lot of money to make. Yeah. And like EA will have lost some money on like Dead Space. You know what I mean? So.
And it goes like it's a big talking point in the industry. Like last year, Hellblade, like Ninja Theory wanted to prove that you could do a AAA looking game on a minuscule indie style budget, and they obviously pulled it off. But you've got the other side of the coin, which is someone like Square Enix, who demand that if so much money's been spent on something, that they're gonna get it back, and they force microtransactions in. That's kind of a topic for another day. But it seems that the developers are very much aware of that going into like a fourth installment. But all that stuff's very interesting. So another big thing is that they're actually talking about changing up the main character. It wouldn't be Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes?
No,
Isaac Clarke?
Who's
Isaac Hayes? He's not.
He's the Ballad of Ira Hayes.
Right, yeah, not him. It would be Isaac Clarke. But they've said that because Dead Space 3 ended on such an apocalyptic event, it kind of cleans the slate if they wanted to. So they talked about Isaac continuing forward, but basically the way that they envisioned the Dead Space 4 would be headed up by Ellie, who I don't even remember.
Yes.
So who's Ellie? What's your
what they said about like sort of it gives you a free slate, but Ellie was sort of like a major. She's like the second major character in this game, except unless you maybe go for Isaac's like NPC co-op helper, which you know he was like a non-character. He was shoehorned in at the last minute.
Right.
Ellie would have been like a cool protagonist, but I don't really know how you can have a clean break yet sort of have these ties to the past. Her sort of like getting over Isaac, so you assume Isaac's just dead and gone. Like that would have been an interesting angle. I think a new protagonist would have freshened it up. This was very much sort of Isaac Clarke's story for the first 3 games, and if you were going to go in this new direction, you sort of need casualties as well. So it would be cool to like maybe kind of Infinity War, kill off a lot of the cast and sort of have like these remaining people get to grips with this new world.
I guess that's another thing for like the marketability of it too, because if you're going to go down the numbered route, then you assume it's a continuation.
Yes.
But it's like what Mass Effect tried to do with Andromeda. It's like, this is a clean break and we're going to do something else. But I like the idea of them, going in a whole new direction, cementing it with a new character and just letting Dead Space live on. Like he actually talks about how solid the IP is.
Yeah.
And they talk about one of the last things that's worth exploring is that they did plan out stuff like the origin of the necromorphs, and they did have a whole bunch of lore that they were ready to reveal to people, but obviously they haven't yet. He doesn't want to give it away in the interview because he says like maybe, maybe eventually they might get to go to. I mean, IO Interactive managed to get the Hitman IP off Square, and then they're doing that.
Yeah.
They're pretty much an indie dev with a AAA franchise now, which is really cool to see. So maybe at some point in the future, some sort of something will come around.
These like the guys who made this had great ideas. The original ideas for the third game, what this sounds like in a clean break would be great. You could have like Ellie in that role because let's be forget Isaac Clarke, while he started out as a sort of unassuming engineer, became a total badass towards the end. There was nothing he could do and no gun he couldn't create. So to have that kind of new character, the new break, the survival things would fit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got stuff like they talk about wanting to like refine and perfect the weapon crafting stuff. Yeah. He actually says that the team got maybe a little bit too overzealous with the way that stuff was implemented and the way that it worked. It wasn't necessarily as fun as it could have been. But you twin that with survival mechanics and an idea where you're going ship to ship. Yeah. He talks about the ships being incredibly like identifiable and individual. Like he says, the Ishimura is it's its own character. He wanted that for each ship you'd be going to.
Yeah, and like you said, there's so much lore to explore. Like we barely scratched the surface. Like if you go into like books and comics and stuff, there is so much that didn't make it into the games, and you could argue you do lose a little bit of the mystery of like the necromorphs when you go into that. But there was scope there for such a hugely sort of ambitious next stage of this franchise. I'm gutted we couldn't get it.
I don't want to say never say never.
Yeah.
Because I think that, like you said, it's a solid IP and it's bankable. Dead Space is nigh on a household name. A lot of people have at least heard of it, and it seems like even if you're going to argue the business route, it's worth retapping into at some point. So maybe on a long enough timeline, we'll eventually get to see this brought to fruition. And I like the idea that he's keeping some secrets to himself till later. But that's what we have for now. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Would you like to have seen this version of Dead Space 4, or what would you like to see instead? I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you soon.
Bye.
Goodbye.